thank you for listening and supporting the Daily Memphian. Sign up for one of our many free newsletters and breaking news alerts at dailymemphian.com/email to receive the latest local news stories impacting our community. Our weekly newsletters cover everything from sports to arts and culture, business, food, and more, along with daily updates of all the news we publish each day. Sign up or manage your email preferences at dailymemphian.com/email.
This is the Daily Memphian Politics Podcast. I'm Bill Adkins. Our main event is Reverend Bill Adkins of Greater Imani Church and Christian Center on violent crime in our city. Top of the podcast, if it's April, time to talk about changes at the Shelby County Election Commission. A shuffle by the city's Democratic caucus of state legislators means longtime Democratic Election Commissioner Anthony Tate exits the five-member body, and just about official as we record is approval by the Tennessee Election Commission of the legislator's choice of Kendra Lee as the newest Democratic Election Commissioner, joining Benny Smith. Lee is policy manager with Equity Alliance, one of the statewide groups working to increase black voter turnout. She was also among the plaintiffs in the state lawsuit last year that expanded absentee balloting in the August and November elections. Lee also worked in Elizabeth Warren's 2020 presidential primary bid in our part of the state. Republican state legislators representing Shelby County stick with Brent Taylor, Frank Uhlhorn, and Steve Stampson as the GOP majority on the Election Commission. Taylor, a former county commissioner and city council member, is the new chairman of the body, and he will be here on our next edition. And 3 years garbage collection in Area E, Cordova, Hickory Hill, and East Memphis, has gone from Inland Waste to Waste Pro and now Team Waste. Since we last met here, Memphis Mayor Jim Strickland canceled the city's 5-year, nearly $34 million contract with Waste Pro, just short of the 2-year mark for poor performance. Team Waste, which includes what used to be All-American Waste until 2016, has been under emergency contract with the city since April 2nd, helping with city solid waste crews on overtime to make up trash pickup in Area E that in some cases has been on the curb for most of March. Strickland sacked Waste Pro at the end of a 20-day cure period for Waste Pro to make good or lose the contract. Strickland said in his notice dropping the contract that he saw no appreciable change in the conditions. So Team Waste is on the routes at a rate of $25.44 per household per month. At 35,000 households in Area E, that's just under $900,000 a month, while the city administration figures out if it wants to put out a bid for a new long-term contract with a private company or bring Area E in-house with the Solid Waste Division. Another 4-hour joint session of the Memphis City Council and Shelby County Commission this past week. It ends with a few items that each of the bodies will probably pursue and possibly vote up or down. The most actionable item is the concept of doing away with Edge's 75% property tax abatements as long as whoever gets that kind of pilot has an average pay of $13 an hour plus benefits. The proposal still taking shape in various versions by council members Patrice Robinson and Martavius Jones is a sliding scale. 75% abatement the maximum, and that's if no more than 25% of the employees make $17 an hour plus or minus benefits, that part depending on which version you're reading. As the percentage of jobs below $17 an hour rises, the abatement drops. The $17 an hour standard also negotiable at this point. Beyond that, though, a larger desire by some among the two bodies to stop talking about reforms and vote something up or down, and warnings from others that even discussing these kind of changes will mean that economic development prospects and their site consultants eliminate Memphis from consideration. Either way, this might be the first significant actual votes on economic development changes since the formation of EDGE 11 years ago. That decision took pilot approval out of the hands of the council and commission. The The Tennessee Lookout in Nashville reporting a DNA database kept by the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation has not been keeping up samples as required by a 14-year-old state law. That amendment under state law added those arrested and accused of violent sex crimes to the database that originally applied only to those convicted and sent to prison for such crimes. The Lookout reports more than 76,000 DNA samples that should be in the database going back to 1998 are not there, and Memphis accounts for a third of the DNA samples that should be there but aren't. Since the amendment to the state law from 2016 to 2019, more than 8,000 DNA samples that should have been collected were not, and that's by TBI estimates. TBI Director David Roush is quoted as saying the missing DNA samples from Shelby County amount to what he called Part 2 of an issue that began with 12,000 unprocessed rape test kits stored at various locations around the city that were first acknowledged publicly by police in 2013. An update on the bill in the Tennessee legislature around the 3 Gs, Germantown Elementary, Middle, and High Schools. It is still dead. An effort to attach it as an amendment to another bill didn't make the cut. This bill would have given Shelby County Schools and Germantown Municipal Schools District 6 months to work out an agreement to move the 3 Gs out of Shelby County Schools and into the Germantown school system. The House sponsor, Memphis Republican Mark White, is now trying to facilitate talks between the two school systems without a bill that adds an or else to all of this, or else the legislature could force it by cutting off funds to Shelby County schools. Well, the difference now, White is saying he will probably bring the proposal back in the 2023 session if the two school systems don't work it out in the interim. Elsewhere in the Capitol, Shelby County Republican Tom Leatherwood's bill to do away with partisan primaries in Shelby County and Davidson County elections only failed in committees. As we record this on a Thursday, a bill on its way to the Senate floor that would keep in place the pandemic exception for local elected bodies that allows members attending online or by conference call to vote remotely. Before the pandemic, state law allowed members of local legislative bodies to attend meetings remotely, but that same law barred them from voting on matters. Joining us now, the founder and pastor of Greater Imani Church and Christian Center, Dr. Bill Adkins. At the outset of our discussion about violent crime, I have to tell you that this is not the first time the two of us have been in front of microphones together. It's been about 30 years since our last time on air together at WHBQ Radio at the end of the 1980s and the end of the News Talk format at that station. The road away from radio has been a long one, and what brings us together all these years later is an issue that was around when we were both doing radio for a living: violent crime in a city with a long history of violence. Bill, let's start with your appeal earlier this month. You think our civic discourse of late has become too quiet on this issue, especially coming off a record year for homicides, for murder in our city, correct?
Absolutely, Bill. And you know, yes, when you and I go back a long way to news radio, and there was such thing as news radio, and we've been friends for many, many years. Bill, the psychologists tell us that the human spirit and mind can become conditioned to anything. If it accepts a position according to what it's experienced for a long period of time, that becomes the norm, the normalcy. Now, what I'm saying is that in some of our communities, crime is such a normal thing, and death and murder and shootings are such a normal thing, that people have learned to adapt to it. That's tragic. That's tragic for us. That's tragic for them. It's tragic for everyone, that things are so bad in certain communities in this city that people go to sleep every night by the sound of gunshots. They sleep on their floors, under their beds, in their bathtubs. They don't sit out on their porches. They don't take walks. They don't run. They don't do the things that many other people do in suburbia because they live in literally a war zone. So what I've noticed, Bill, is that people are adapting tragically tragically. And that's why we don't have a public discourse. That's why there's no anger. There was not enough anger when these children are struck down by stray bullets, and gangland murders are just rampant every single night in this town. We're on a record pace already. So yeah, I'm very disappointed that the public discourse is not what it should be. I'm very disappointed that it doesn't seem like enough of us care, and that's very troubling.
Mm-hmm. So what is the way forward? And maybe more importantly, is that way forward something that we haven't tried or used or expressed before?
Well, I think we've tried everything. I think we've tried the kitchen sink and everything that goes with it. But this is a new day and a new time. This is different from 30 years ago, Bill, for you and me. This is a different climate. It's a different backdrop, different landscape. People think differently. And because of that, they don't seem to know how to respond to various issues. What troubles me the most is the things that we saw then, we still see now. But we're still trying to solve the problem by the methods that we utilized and tried 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't work. That's why we've got this whole push for reimagining policing. I've been calling and asking for community policing, which I've always been a favor of. And I thought that that's one old trick that I thought was good. We need substations, and then we need substations. I was asked the question, what is a substation? Well, we have the stations and we have the substations, but we need some 2-man, 2 policemen, cottages or whatever stretch over places of town where in certain communities where people can come and voice their concerns and their complaints. We have the police stations. We've had substations, but we need those little small units as well. Police presence is always a great deterrent to crime, and we just don't have enough police visibility in our communities now.
Mm-hmm. The visibility and numbers can be two different things. And you're as aware as I am of the discussion of late about how many police is enough. And I've talked to people who think there should be some major reform in the way that police do their job, but who have also said, but we also need more. The question is how many is enough, and what are police doing that's different with larger numbers?
Well, our city's HR director, Alexandria Smith, recently told me that we're about 400 policemen down. We're 400 short of where we should be. Now, that's a lot. That's a lot. Bill, almost every policeman in the city of Memphis is working overtime now. Now, I imagine they love it because they're making extra money. But the fact that we've got so many policemen working overtime is indicative of the problem that we have. Sometimes we don't have enough patrol cars in a community. And that's when you're talking about the visibility situation. We don't have enough. I've seen cases, for instance, in the Raleigh community where my church is. I've seen instances where we had maybe 2 cars in a 25 square mile area. 2 cars, 2. Either people call in sick or policemen on vacation leave, but 2 cars in Raleigh is disastrous. And I've seen it that way. Now, that's not normal, and that doesn't happen all the time, but it has happened. And when we see things like that, then we're in trouble, and the police in trouble because, number one, if one car gets called one place and another car gets called another place, what if one of those cars needs backup? Then you've got to pull resources from another precinct, and they've got to come, sirens blaring, fast as they can, leaving another community to get to your precinct to back you up. And that creates a hole there. So it's a continuing problem right now of a policeman, and it's very frustrating for them. Believe me, if you talk to these policemen today, they are extremely frustrated because they know that many times they get in situations that they're very uncomfortable with.
Mm-hmm. So often in the recent discussions, this has been seen as an either-or situation. Either you see violent crime as the priority, or you see systemic problems with how police, the criminal justice system, go about their jobs and their use of force against Black men and women as the priority. Is this either or?
No, Bill, it's both. It's both. It's tragic. Crime is most often perpetrated against the Black community. We are the victims. Black community is the victim of crime more than any other group, ethnic group in this city. So we're the victims, but we're the complainers also, because we don't like the way police do their policing, and rightfully so. And I don't have to mention to all of your podcast listeners that just in the recent days, you look what's happened just outside of Minneapolis again, another shooting. A police woman pulled the trigger of a pistol instead of a taser. Then we see in Chicago, a young 13-year-old boy was shot with a video of him clearly with his hands up, and shot and killed by a police officer in Chicago. And I don't need to name all of the countless numbers of killing of unarmed people. And we don't even have to talk about George Floyd, a man that was absolutely murdered on national television with a knee on his throat. So we're caught between the rock and the hard place. Yes, we're the victims of crime, but yes, we're also the victim of bad and poor policing. And that's the problem we have. Bill, you and I have known each other for years, and we've seen some difficult days before, but I don't know if I've ever seen anything as difficult as this is, Bill, now. We've come so far and yet still have so far to go. African Americans are still treated differently and viewed and perceived differently than white people are. All of my sons have degrees. One has a PhD, one has a master's, the other is a school teacher with a bachelor's degree. All of them educated, highly educated. But there are some white policemen who would look at my sons and they would not be able to discern that these are family-minded, Christian, church-minded, educated young men. All they'll see is 3 Black men. And they will respond to them based on nothing but that. These are Black guys. And either, and here's the scary part, either I don't like black guys or I'm afraid of Black guys. Either stimuli is bad. I've said many times, if a policeman is frightened by the sight of Black people, he or she needs to quit right now. They need to quit. They need to stop. If they see Black people and they're so afraid that they're going to put their finger on a trigger, they need to quit right now. But it's that perception of us, Bill. It's that perception of how we're seen. It's how we're viewed. It's the stereotypes. It's all those things that are so racist that unfortunately seep into the minds of so many people. It's you look at the Black lieutenant, the Army lieutenant just the other day, tased by police, pulled over for no particular reason, said he didn't have his license tag on his new truck, but the dealer's sticker was in the window, but they still pulled him over at gunpoint. He had done it, ordered him out of the truck at gunpoint. This is only because they saw a Black man behind the wheel. They didn't know he was educated, college educated. They didn't realize that he was an officer in the United States Army. They saw just a Black man, and to them, all Black men look alike. And for some, all Black men look like criminals and look like threats. That's the problem, Bill.
Mm-hmm. And so with that in mind, if the way police do their jobs changes, if it is reimagined, does that too solve the crime problem?
Well, it starts at who will recruit to be police. Again, I'm sorry, but here's another rock and hard place. Policing is not for everybody. And certainly we don't have a lot of people that want to be policemen. We don't have a lot of children talking about they want to be policemen when they grow up. That's just not it today. And the problem with recruiting police is that sometimes the ones that want to be policemen really bad are the ones that should never be policemen. And then the ones you want to be policemen have no desire to be policemen. So you've got to find these people that would fit almost perfect bill to be policemen, and that's almost impossible. The reality is that we have to teach and train our policemen differently. The mental side, the toughness, the tolerance they've got to learn how to have. It's an unthinkable job, and they need to, when they raise their hand up to accept that oath, they need to realize it's an unthinkable job. You don't get thanked a lot in policing, and you get criticized a lot. And that tolerance level has to be extremely high, because people will mistreat them, speak badly to them. But that's no reason to shoot or kill anyone. And they got to know, just because someone calls you bad names or curses you out, is no reason for you to pull your weapon and to put a bullet in them. It's tough, but our training, especially in the area of dealing with the mentally ill, we only have 2 or 3 units in the city of Memphis to deal with the mentally ill. A lot of these phone calls that the dispatchers ditch out to the police, rather, many cases are mentally ill people, and they need more than just police. They need clinical help. They need a clinician. They need a psychologist. They need a psychiatrist. And sometimes they need to be locked up, not necessarily in a jail, but maybe in an institution, because they're schizophrenic, severely schizophrenic, severely dangerous. And this is the case. So you just can't train a policeman to shoot a gun, to drive a car, to handcuff people anymore. You've got to teach them the sensitivities that they must have to be a law enforcement officer. And that's what we're running afoul at right now. Policemen don't have the tolerance. They don't have the patience. They're afraid. They're scared, and they shouldn't be. I mean, they shouldn't be in the sense that they're law enforcement officers. They're human beings, and they're going to be afraid. But we've got to train our police officers in a better way before we release them on the streets right now. Right now, the last few years, we can pick up a guy, and in 90 days, you can take a guy from the street, and in 90 days, he's in a police car by himself. And that's scary. He's in a police car patrolling a neighborhood such as Frazier by himself. And that's scary.
Mm-hmm. And so that kind of brings me back to the dilemma. That gets more police officers on the street, but it doesn't necessarily get to the idea of changing the way that police do their jobs. That takes a longer time. And in the meantime, crime remains a problem. Violent crime remains a problem. I think you've described it aptly when you've talked several times here about rock and a hard place.
Well, yeah, it's a dichotomy. It's really a dichotomy. The way people are now, and I guess I'm going to sound Jurassic now, Bill. I'm going to show my age now. But the way people are now, with little respect for authority, little respect for kids, with little respect for adults, little respect for other people's property. It's just different now. And a lot of it has to do with poor parenting. Poor parenting is a critical issue for us right now, that so many kids grow up not being taught what's right and what's wrong. They don't know it's improper to say this or improper to say that. They don't know that they should respect their elders and learn how to respect authority. They don't get that. And because of that, we're dealing with a different kind of people now. We're dealing with many people who just have no idea. Let me give you an example, Bill. I read this article where a teacher asked his students in the 5th grade, what do you want to be when you grow up? And of course, these were minority students in a poor inner city school. And he asked them, what do you want to be when you grow up? And hardly any of them had anything to say. And then he asked this question. When he didn't get a response from them in that area, when they didn't say what they wanted to be when they grew up, Then he said, how long do you think you're going to live? And Bill, the tragic thing was most of them said things like 19, 20, 25. And he said the oldest was 30. The oldest was 30. So you're talking about children in communities in this country who have no hope whatsoever. None. Mm-hmm. No hope. That's why they can't possibly think about being something one day. They have no hope. They see no future, none whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And that's tragic. And I know people will say, oh, but that's their fault. No. There are, as we say, systemic reasons for this. There are things that have gone on, things that have not gone on that have created these conditions. We've got to admit, now, let me say this, Bill. Poverty is no excuse to be a criminal. Poverty is no excuse to shoot and kill one another. Absolutely not. But poverty is part of the issue. The fact that we have so many people living under the scale of poverty in this community and across this nation, and churches like mine, we can't get the support we used to get from the city and the county to hire people in the summer to give these kids summer jobs, to do those types of things. It's horrible. And this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with communities where they've become subcultures because they can't see their way out. And when people can't see their way out, they will tend to be violent, and they will tend to do wrong things, which may be criminal.
Mm-hmm. A lot of the things you've talked about kind of work into something that you've been involved in recently. You served on one of the citizen panels put together by Mayor Jim Strickland to review the candidates to be the next Memphis police director. What do you want to say, first of all, about the process and what might happen in that regard?
Well, our responsibility by the mayor asked us to interview 7 candidates, and then, of course, we interviewed an 8th candidate. And these candidates were brought before the mayor by a consulting group, a searching consulting group that recommended these particular police officers, commanders, as candidates for a police director. And our groups, we did our jobs. My group was the civic group, and we asked the tough questions. We asked the very hard questions. We talked about the George Floyds, and we talked about the killings of unarmed people and the shootings and police brutality. And we talked about all of these things, and we asked very difficult questions of these particular candidates. And we provided the information to the mayor. He would attend a meeting with us following our interviews with these candidates, and we would give him what we thought of each of these candidates. And I think all of them have some merit, but there were 2 or 3 that stood out. I'm not at liberty to say who, but 2 or 3 really stood out, separated from the pack as truly more qualified than the others. I'm just of the opinion, Bill, that, and I've told the mayor this, that whomever becomes the next police director of the city of Memphis, he cannot just be a good cop. He can't, or she just can't be a good cop. They've got to be sensitive to what's going on in our communities. They've got to be part sociologist, part psychologist, part minister, part social worker. They've got to have a mix of a little bit of everything. What we don't need is just a person who is just a good cop. We need someone with more training, and we have some, and some of the ones that we recommended have had specialized trainings in these areas and have gone to various programs and institutes, and many have degrees in these areas. So this is where we are right now in policing. Policing is changing. It has to change. It can't continue the way it is. So we're doing our job for the mayor, and I'm hopeful that whomever he presents to the council will be acceptable, because we need to get this decision made quickly.
Okay. A final point in a conversation that has gone way too fast after 30 years. But let me ask you. You have 3 contenders who come within the ranks of the Memphis Police Department, 3 of the finalists. And it has been almost 40 years since someone from outside the ranks has been police director. Do you think it's time, or is that a distinction that was important to you in making this decision?
Well, yeah. Well, here's the problem, Bill. We've only had 2 police directors in the last 50 years in Memphis that have come from outside of Memphis. Chief Holloman and now Buddy Chapman and Holloman.
And
I
Jay
believe
Hubbard.
those. And Hubbard, yeah. Those are ones. And most of our police directors have come from inside. Now, the problem with selecting a police director from outside of Memphis is how long would the learning curve be for that police director to catch up on Memphis, the culture of the Memphis Police Department? How long would it take he or she to really learn these precinct commanders, to learn the differences in the communities? Just think about how hard it is to move into a new town. When you move into a new city and you got to find your way around and pick your way around, and you don't even know where the bad neighborhoods are. You don't know where the good neighborhoods are. You don't know where the good schools and the poor schools. You don't know much of nothing. And it takes you forever to figure that out. That's the problem with hiring a director from outside of Memphis. Okay, here's the other side of that coin. But the positive in hiring a person from outside is they can come in with a whole new picture, a whole new ideal. And just maybe the current police culture needs to be shaken up a little bit. Maybe the friendships and the attachments and loyalties that exist, maybe they need to be challenged. Maybe you need someone to come in and just literally just change everything around. The problem, again, and I'm gonna go back. I'm wishy-washy here. Forgive me, but the problem here again is, how long would it take them? And we don't have that much time. We just don't have that much time. I don't know if we have enough time for someone to sit and learn Memphis in the area. So if it sounds like I'm for a homer, a guy or a lady that's already here, maybe so. But we did interview some people out of the city of Memphis that were outstanding.
Mm-hmm. All right. That's where we'll leave it. Dr. Bill Adkins is founder and pastor of Greater Imani Church and Christian Center. This week on WKNO's Behind the Headlines, we are joined by Shelby County Assessor of Property Melvin Burgess Jr. and his Chief Administrative Officer Javier Bailey. We'll be talking about the recent property reappraisal, the proposal to move to reappraisals every other year, and about the value of those homes in Germantown that flooded in 2019. You can hear the podcast of that show on our website now. Subscribe to the Daily Memphian at dailymemphian.com. You can subscribe to this podcast and our others at Google Podcast, iTunes, Spotify, and Stitcher. I'm Bill Dries. The Daily Memphian Politics Podcast is produced by Kix Patterson.
In-depth journalism in the Memphis community. The Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.